This is just a reminder and to tell people who are new that when you ask a question, if you use the mic, the people who are streaming can hear the question. Thank you. And Suvansh will bring it around if you raise your hand.
Lama Michael, when we recite the refuge prayer, we say, I will now practice the absorption of calm abiding. The word absorption is a very curious word to me. Seems like it has so many connotations. I think of a paper towel that absorbs water, or things that absorb your attention, or put that on my head, and or when you go to another country and you absorb some of their culture. I'm just curious about the use of that term, absorption.
I've never been curious about that until this very moment. So, which doesn't mean I have a ready answer. But maybe maybe the meaning of the word contains what it is we're looking at. So if I look at my understanding of absorption, I see water being spilt on the sink and the water flowing along and then going over the edge. and so I throw something there to absorb the water. And maybe there's some meaning there that could be applicable when we are distracted. That's kind of like the spilt water that's flowing. And our ability to notice, and since there's really nothing to do with it, we call our attention, let's call it our still, calm, abiding attention as the absorption. So we are both the thing that absorbs, and we are the thing that is absorbed. So, because we could add one more thing, just as an enrichment. We have been, for the last few meetings, puzzling ourselves with the proposition that it is utterly impossible to accomplish our own benefit. And from a Buddhist perspective, of course, well, let's take it first from just our ordinary perspective. We come together and we practice meditation, we listen to the instructions, we try to do it, and we succeed always at some level. And we're hoping to be more calm in our abiding and to be less plagued with angst and anger and all sorts of what we call the kleshas. The problem is that it's a fundamental thing in every Buddhist tradition, as you know, that the issue really is not the distractions or even the anger that we might have, or the jealousy, or the greed, or the pride, all of these things, it's not those things that are the problem. It's that we identify with them. I am proud. I won't say that I am greedy because that makes people dislike you. But that is included in there, that the identification is there, whether we want it or not, which is often the case. Like if we want to be friends with somebody and then we have an anger fit with them, we lose them as a friend. But that wasn't our intention. Our intention was often to prove that I'm right and you're wrong. And somehow we thought that that would help the friendship. But generally not. But anyway. So I think the calm abiding and the absorption in calm abiding is to absorb ourselves in a way of becoming still. And in the stillness, even if we identify with the stillness, like, whoa, I'm a meditator, in the stillness we see the problem there, right? And that's the antidote. It isn't anything else than just to see it. Everything comes from the seen. And that is true, really, from the most fundamental teaching on meditation to the most advanced. It's just seen more clearly and more deeply.
I could just add that typically that word is used for the Sanskrit word samadhi. Okay. So if you want to look up samadhi, then you could learn some more about it.
The translation for the Sanskrit samadhi is, in fact, the right absorption.
So now that we understand the word, can you guess what's next?
Lama Michael?
So the thing with the microphone, you never know where it's coming from. Could be in South Africa or something. Yes.
I haven't been able to relate well to the teaching that every single experience is new.
Is new? Oh.
And so for me, that's a concept for me. And sometimes I'll try to fit my experience into that concept. But I wonder, it really implies a lack of continuity, repeatability. It's pretty radical concept.
A lack of continuity?
Mm-hmm. So if I have a cold and there's symptoms of this cold, they're the same symptoms, so they feel like, or I experience them as, the same symptoms of the cold I had last year. So the concept that this is an entirely new experience is an overlay for me. And I just wonder if you could talk about the benefit of using that idea to organize our experience.
Yeah. So let's try this on. If it weren't for the fact that every experience we have is fresh, is new, there would be no continuity. I just want to turn it back on the thing. The continuity is, in a certain way, the proof that it's fresh, it's connected. Because we always say that one of the, I don't want to say the self-evident truth, because I actually don't think any truth is self-evident until you see it, right? But it's generally held to be as close to self-evident as you can get, that interdependence is utterly unbounded. There's like no beginning and no end. So this is not what we generally recognize as our experience of things. It's like I wake up in the morning and I feel like it's a beginning. I go through the day, and during the day various things, projects or conversations start, come to an end, and so on. But there's an underlying continuity of experience that is unfolding continually during the day, during the week, during the month, the year, and we would even go so far as to say during our life leading into future lives and so on. But the point here is not that truth is particularly important. So I think that is important to understand, that it actually is not something to believe, but rather holding the view and understanding that it is a view. Kind of like if you look through your, if you put on, in this environment, if you put on pink glasses, for example, I mean like pink lenses, everything would change a little bit, but we would understand. We're having a different experience, but it's not because of anything other than that we put the glasses on. So in the same way, when we think that the continuity is continually fresh by virtue of one thing leading to another, to another, to another, all the time, day and night. It's not a thing to believe, it's more a thing to hold as if it were true. Now, I think, in fact, the more advanced stages of realization perhaps recognize that method in all experiences. Like every view that we hold, the views are really not meant to be proofs about reality so much, because the only really valuable proof about some kind of reality other than the nature of our own minds is really only valuable insofar as we experience it directly. Otherwise, it's just a concept. And concepts, in terms of the value that they bring to, let's say, spiritual realization and transformation, it's like Mount Everest and a grain of sand. The concept is sort of like, you want to climb Mount Everest, the first thing you need to do is decide. You need to practice something to work on it, but that's not climbing the mountain. And all of the effort and the experiences that come as you move in that direction are the important things. So this is not about the truth of interdependence as if it was in some way separate from our own experience. We need with each one of these things to recognize the truth that is held in that proposition, that every thought that we have is fresh. So I think that once we see that clearly, we might suffer from the conclusion of it being an objective truth. like a truth that is separate from my own experience, if that is true, it still is useless. We have to have the experience. So outside of that, in the realm of science and human endeavors in general, we don't feel like we need necessarily to have the experience in order to gain some benefit from some kind of truth. But in the context of spiritual development and meditation, the experience itself is the primary thing. And we generate those experiences in a number of ways. And one of them is, whether we do it intentionally or not, but we want to do them intentionally. One of them is that we hold views. If we hold the view intentionally, we are going to see more clearly what it is that we're looking at. If we don't hold it intentionally, then we're likely to find ourselves with some confusion. So I think this is simple, actually. I want to have the experience that every thought that I have is new, has never occurred before, will never occur again, because it is not an objective reality. Experience comes and goes. And if I look at my experience close while it's happening, I see the continuous change, kind of like waves rising and falling on the ocean. So I would never say, for example, riding in a boat on the ocean, "Hey, there's that wave again." We would never say that. Because we completely understand that similar causes and conditions gave rise to something that looked like something that was before, but actually it's not. So in the same way, just to try on the experience of having the experience that every thought, every feeling is brand new, think of it as things rising on the ocean, it's just kind of like coming and going and coming and going and coming and going. So there has to be a benefit to this, because if it's the Dharma, it always has an underlying value in terms of benefit. So just understanding that the waves on the ocean function like this is actually, we might say to each other, well, that's actually how the waves are. But the next time that my friend says, "I don't like you anymore," that view is not so helpful. But if we understand experientially that my feelings of happiness and sadness and angst and relaxation and tension and all these things are constantly just coming and going, we can have a relationship with them that is more natural. But it does not happen without some kind of effort, because human beings generally will say we identify with things, which solidifies it in a certain way. Like, if I like you today, then I like you tomorrow. And therefore we naturally think it's the same. It's the same over and over. But so the benefit comes from not by throwing that away, but rather by recognizing that it is just, in fact, things rising and falling all the time. So we're not actually trying to paste a new face on our face, except on Halloween, but rather that we're trying to see how the movement of experience manifests for us. It's non-ending. It's not just during the day or the night. It is 24/7, continuous experiences unfolding. They never stop. Even we go to sleep, we have dreams. Even we don't remember the dreams, we had the dreams. And we are affected by what we had even when we don't remember them. So the view itself just sets up the method by which we can come to have that experience, that all of our thoughts, our opinions, our ideas, whenever they occur and I recognize them, it is fresh. It has never occurred before. It's like the wave on the ocean. I've been in this place 1,000 times on the water in this little passageway, and here is another wave. And I've been with hundreds and hundreds of waves. But we would not say those waves are all the same. Or if you did say they were all the same, I think you might say, that's a kind of a funny distortion. Where does a wave store itself and then come back and repeat the thing again? So this is partly, it's a practice, like, can you remind yourself over and over again, the song that I hear over and over that I've come to hate by virtue of not being able to get rid of it is not the same song every day. Is that okay? You need more?
No, that's really very helpful to me. The idea that holding the view, there's a benefit in being able to relate to the experience in a natural way is very, very helpful.
Yes, and the idea that we cannot accomplish our own benefit is actually only a way in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition of saying that you accomplish your own benefit by putting your effort and your intention on the benefit of all beings. And I think the only proof personally that I have of that is that every truly great being that I've ever met seemed to be genuinely happy. And in addition to that, people who were around that person, man or woman, felt like my life is so much more than it was before I knew this person. And so I have the sense that it's true, that with intention, not even necessarily any skillful means, just with the intention of using every act and every word that I have, which is very difficult to even have that intention consistently, but by doing it even a small amount, we get a sense of this is useful, this is valuable. And as time goes by, we gain some skill in that also, and we recognize this is actually the way that you accomplish your own benefit. You have to rely on all sentient beings. They are the support for your well-being. And if you are the support for their well-being, then the interconnectedness functions.
I'm over here.
Thank you. Suddenly you're visible.
As we've been speaking about the inevitability of a change and the freshness of the newness of each moment and the experience of continuity, I am thinking about what's inevitable in that continuity will be disrupted. We face disruptions in every aspect of life, and we have a view of continuity as something that we can maintain towards reaching the summit or safely getting to shore despite the possibility of a rogue wave arising. And I just wonder what the Dharma would have to say about how do we maintain that goal of keeping things fresh and continuous when we face disruptions.
In one of our most famous recitations, a prayer called the Dorje Changtungma, the person who mouths that prayer is ostensibly making this discovery that his thoughts and feelings and ideas and all, like none of it is ever repeated, that it's always something different, it's always new. So I think that this is not something for us to force on ourselves. It's really a matter of making the discovery that in subtle ways and gross ways, what we thought 5 minutes ago, even though the precise words that we used to describe that thought are precisely the same in this moment, they're actually not. That there have been changes made in that period, and that our entire experience is altered every time that there is change. So it's not an issue of the waves ever being rogue. It's more like, what wave is not a rogue wave? I mean, even if it is mature, it's rogue in the sense of, I mean, what is a rogue? A rogue is kind of a one-off. So in a certain way, it just substantiates the thing, is that there isn't any, we would never say there's that wave again. We just wouldn't say it. And even we might say, but it's part of our kind of more than cultural, kind of a human thing. We make a kind of placeholders for things, like while we're speaking and understanding and in exchanges and all, and that effort that we make, which is deeply cultural as well as, I think, just human, it tends to encourage us to hold the view and to think and to experience. You're the same person I met last week or last month. I can look and I can say, well, you look the same, therefore you must be the same. We just kind of function like that. And we might even say, well, I think I kind of agree with you, but if you're saying that everything is fresh, it doesn't sound very functional in the world. And with that, I would agree wholeheartedly, with a sense of celebration. It's a good thing, because an awful lot of what we call functional isn't. But in this case, I think actually the function is actually potentially almost transcendent. But we have to see the continuity. We have to see that every time we open our mouth and say something, it's a rogue speech. It's never happened before. Because we are learning, growing, maturing. This is not necessarily some high spiritual proposition. It's just that we learn all the time. And that's a piece of it is that we identify with things which fundamentally often stops the learning process. We just come to an end with it. And then we may throw it away. Somebody will say, "Oh, I heard this wonderful piece of music." "Yeah, I heard that once too." What's the it? I heard that thing. What is that thing? So what we find great joy in when we are just present and not having the sense or the conceptual understanding that I'm having this experience again, or I'm meeting this person again and all, but rather we're having a brand new experience. So I suppose what I would recommend is, in your meditation, when you're just sitting and things are arising and you're having the sense that these things are distractions, they're disrupting my meditation. That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is a fresh experience is arising. Put your awareness on it. What does it do? It's like a wave. What do waves do? They rise, they disappear. So your experience is fresh, it's authentic, you are having that experience, so you can put your awareness on it. And it's actually really easy to put your awareness on it as long as you have no expectation for how long that thing will be there. It's not like I put my glasses here and put my awareness on it. The glasses don't disappear. They just stay there, but I remain distracted. Now, why is that? Because we say that the nature of mind, we sometimes put that technical term on it, the Dharmakaya, which is one of the aspects of the nature of mind, it continually, see, I want to say this not in a mistaken way, experiences continually flow from the nature of mind. Continuously. So that is a standard, very profound teaching. So if it's true, then we might actually make another mistake, which is, well, then how am I ever going to meditate if the experiences continually flow day and night, all the time, dead or alive? It sounds like a curse, like I can never get out of this maelstrom of thoughts and feelings going by. So this is why this morning I wanted to say, we're not talking here about being free of thoughts, free of experiences. That is hopeless. So let us not have a tradition which is hopeless. It is not hopeless. It's actually, we need to recognize that that's actually what's happening. When we see that that's what's happening, the meaning and nature of distraction totally changes. What is distraction if I'm not in charge or have no way of turning off this continual experience pump that just keeps bringing things out? The issue here is difficult because we think that actually to shut that off is the way to have perfect meditation. But that is not meditation. Meditation, if it's to be of any value, has to be present in the midst of turmoil. So one of the experiences that flows out of this Dharmakaya is the experience of stillness. That is also there. It's not just hydrogen bombs going off everywhere. It's all experience. Joy, grief, everything. I mean, isn't it true? This is not like some big surprise, is it? I mean, you sit down and try to meditate and you can't put your mind on the object. That's what you're experiencing. You're experiencing one thing after another coming. This is not a defect. If you try to fix that defect, you'll just go deeper into your disgruntled self around this thing that you can't get to it, and finally you'll abandon the tradition and go somewhere else where maybe you'll get it or not. But this is not about undoing thinking, definitely not undoing experiences. That's like getting an iron out in the middle of the ocean and trying to like get rid of the waves. It's just as that ridiculous. So I think we need to go into this thing in a way that does not require us to be absolutely still, or even to put that into the context of the ideal state is that you're absolutely still. Physically, that only happens when you're dead. So, I mean, that's good news. We have a nice state when we're dead. But actually, we also have experiences when we're alive. All of these things need to be part of our spiritual practice. Otherwise, what's the point of it? I mean, I just want to say, generally speaking, whether you're a Christian or a Buddhist or a Muslim or whatever it is it not the case that when we sit and meditate or pray, whatever it is that not in order to benefit ourselves and others? If we rile against our own experiences, there's something fishy about it. So our practice, if we look at it close, is to bring our awareness to the experience as it arises. And ideally, I don't think, so I'll just say it like I think it is that we are not meant in our practice, in our Buddhist tradition, in our meditation, to completely still our minds. Behind the continuous flow of experiences, the mind may be still. But we are not likely to experience that without significant realization, because we will pay attention to the movement, which is what we generally do in our lives. We do not pay attention to the stillness. When we're still, we think, I got to do something. I know, I'll watch television, or I'll call this person, or I'll do something. Stillness feels like anathema to being human. That's just not our thing. And yet we all come together in order to be still. So there's something kind of funny about all of it, but it's also, I think, profound. We want to be still. I think that's genuine. But when we sit down, we find ourselves wondering, haven't we been doing this a little too long? So it's something to ponder. But go deeper with the meditation by going into the experience, not in the sense of analyzing it, measuring it, trying to see what's a good experience or a bad experience, but just the experiences that arise, just go into them still. And like, I can put this out here, this shamatha, I put my awareness on that lid, that's shamatha. But that's way beginner. Put your awareness on the lid and not be distracted. We would say that's way beginner. But I think even that's not quite right. Because who cares whether you put your awareness on the lid? So that's a piece of the problem. We're being asked to still the mind on something we don't care. Like drum up a big thing about it, the lid. You can't do it. Put a $1,000 bill there and say, if you can rest your awareness for 1 minute, there's $1,000. But the fact that you put the $1,000 in it basically assures there's no way you're going to be able to keep your awareness on it. So investigate your own mind by watching the experiences that come out. You don't need to make any of them. Isn't that true? Haven't we all discovered that? You sit down and meditate, and what do? Thinking about lunch, what you did yesterday, whether or not you can kind of straighten things out with this person you have a relationship with. All those things, investigate them. We have a plethora of practices that have very standard steps. First you do this. Well, what do we do first? Huh? Refuge. Is that what you said? Yes, refuge. Good start. Good start. We do refuge first. Why do we do refuge first? Because we actually cannot be present with our experiences. And so we get fooled by the maelstrom of stuff going around us all the time. But nonetheless, we go for refuge because it's an anchor point. I know that I'm attached to what we call samsara, which is an odd thing to be attached to because the translation of that is attachment to all of the confusion and pain in the world. And we are drawn more to go there than we are to do a long retreat. And the way to find that out is go on a long retreat. And you find out, like, I hate this. I'm just sitting around and watching my mind. Is that not true? It's not what we want to do. We want insight. But it's also when you ask that question, you look closely and you'll see experiences unfold from that question. Those experiences are helpful. So we need to like look at the experience and not conceptualize it, not analyze it, just go into the experience. If you can go into the experience, no matter what it is, the mind is waging war on one of your old friends, for example. You want to fix it. You can't fix it. But you can fix yourself by looking at the mind and just watching it, just being with it. It wants to rile and, shoot and do all sorts of things. You just watch. That's hard. We want to fix those things. I want to be liked. I want to be nice to this person and not like this and that. But that doesn't come about by the means that we think it comes about. So back to the beginning, we cannot accomplish our own benefit. If you look at these things carefully, you can see that we're just not clear enough about it. So we end up being the waves that jostle us around. To get onto the clear water, we have to be able to rest our mind on something. And you can rest your mind on the lid. That's totally okay. It's better than having no rest for the mind. But really, you want to go deep into it. You have to rest the mind in the experience. Doesn't matter whether you like the experience or not. But if you have an experience of aversion, I don't like that person, that's the gift. You need to rest your mind on the gift. Rest your mind on the aversion for that person. And because it's just like waves on the ocean, the aversion does not last. We sometimes think, I've had an aversion to that person for years. If you ever looked at it, you'd know that is not true. You have reinvented the aversion over and over and over again. Because if you stopped reinventing it, it'd disappear. It has no life of its own. So this is not new. This is not a new approach to things. though individually you might find it new, it's actually old. This is where all of the teachings on shamatha go. Through shamatha and into insight practice and into higher realization, they all come down to how you relate to your experiences. And before you can do that, you have to be able to recognize the experience and just be with it. This virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state. Thank you so much. That was too much fun.